In the year 1462, the Ottoman Empire was at the height of its power, sweeping through Europe like a relentless storm. Yet there was one man, one prince, who stood as a bulwark against the encroaching tide, Vlad III, known as the Impaler, the Prince of Wallachia and Transylvania. Once the most feared warrior in the Sultan's elite Janissary Corps, Vlad had grown sick of the bloodshed and treachery. He abandoned his life as a soldier to rule his land in peace, until a new darkness stirred in the east. Upon discovering the signs of an impending Ottoman invasion, an enemy helmet found in a stream, Vlad's fate was sealed. He journeyed to Broken Tooth Mountain, where a cave littered with the bones of the damned concealed an ancient horror, a master vampire, a creature as old as the earth itself. Desperate to save his people and family, Vlad made a pact with the dark being, accepting its blood and its curse. Thus was born the legend of Dracula, a being of unimaginable power, half man, half monster, with the strength to turn the tide of war. But as his campaign of terror against the Ottomans unfolded, impaling hundreds of soldiers, their lifeless bodies skewered as a message to any who would dare challenge him, another hunter, one from the stars, took notice. A predator, an ancient warrior from a distant world, drawn by the chaos, arrived in Wallachia. The hunt had begun. The nights in Wallachia had grown longer and darker, as though the very land recoiled in fear of what its prince had become. Dracula's enemies fell before him like autumn leaves, their blood feeding the cursed thirst that gnawed at his soul. Ottoman soldiers, once proud and defiant, were slaughtered by the hundreds, their bodies impaled on spikes to rot beneath the Transylvanian sky. It was a vision of hell on earth, and the stench of death permeated the air for miles. One night, as Dracula returned to his fortress after a skirmish, a new presence lingered in the shadows. His keen senses, now far beyond those of any mortal, picked up an unfamiliar, otherworldly scent. He looked into the blackness of the forest and saw nothing, but he could feel something watching. A predator unlike any he had ever known. The weight of its gaze was heavy, like that of a wolf stalking prey. On the battlefield, the Prince of Wallachia felt no fear, but this was different. He realized he was not the only hunter in these lands anymore. Something had come for him, and it was not human. 2 nights later, under a blood-red moon, Dracula wandered alone into the woods near the site of his latest victory. The stench of death clung to the trees as the wind carried faint whispers through the leaves. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air, and something flew toward him. With inhuman reflexes, Dracula caught the object mid-flight, a curved blade, unlike anything he'd ever seen. His eyes narrowed as a ripple of unease ran through him. Out of the shadows emerged a towering figure, cloaked in invisibility, but Dracula could see the faint shimmer of its outline. A mask covered its face, and its body was wrapped in armor that seemed forged from the bones of beasts long forgotten. This creature was no man. It was a hunter, one that had traveled from worlds beyond to face him. The predator uncloaked itself, revealing its true form. Its dreadlocked hair hung like a lion's mane, and its eyes glowed with a predatory hunger. It clicked its mandibles, a sound like bones grinding together. It had come for Dracula, attracted by the carnage, seeking the ultimate prey. Dracula smiled, baring his fangs. He could sense the power radiating from this creature. This was no mere mortal, this was a warrior, perhaps even an equal. But Dracula had something the predator did not, dark powers beyond this world. He transformed into a swirling cloud of bats, scattering into the night, only to reform behind the creature and strike. The predator reacted with lightning speed, blocking the blow with its wrist blades, sparks flying as metal met supernatural strength. The two circled one another in a deadly dance, each testing the other's weaknesses. The predator lashed out with a plasma caster, but Dracula dodged with blinding speed, vanishing into mist and reappearing out of reach. This was no ordinary battle. It was a clash of titans, a contest of blood and shadow, steel and fang. The fight raged on through the forest, trees splintering under the force of their blows. The predator, agile and fierce, launched a flurry of attacks, wrist blades slicing through the air, a net of steel wrapping around Dracula's form, but the vampire prince broke free with supernatural strength. In retaliation, Dracula's eyes gleamed red as he summoned the power within him. A storm of bats engulfed the predator, blinding the hunter momentarily. Yet the predator was unrelenting. It adjusted its tactics, using thermal vision to track Dracula's movements even in his cloud-like form. It fired a blast from its shoulder cannon, striking Dracula in the chest, sending him crashing through the trees. The vampire staggered but rose again, his wound healing almost instantly. The thirst for blood surged within him, the curse threatening to overwhelm his resolve. But Dracula had not lived centuries to be bested by a mere creature, no matter how fearsome. His form shifted once again, this time into a monstrous bat-like entity, wings unfurling as he launched himself at the predator with the full fury of his newfound powers. The two titans collided in a fury of claws, blades, and blood. The forest was a battlefield of shattered trees and scorched earth. Dracula and the predator fought with a ferocity that would be spoken of for generations. Blades clashed against fangs, blood was spilled, and the ground trembled beneath their blows. But as the sky began to pale with the approach of dawn, Dracula felt the familiar, creeping sensation of weakness. His powers, formidable under the veil of night, were fading as the first light threatened to breach the horizon. The curse that gave him strength was also his greatest vulnerability. The predator, sensing the shift in the battle, pressed harder. It was a patient hunter, waiting for this moment when its prey would falter. The once unstoppable vampire prince now found himself barely able to keep pace. The predator's wrist blades cut deeper, and Dracula's reflexes grew sluggish. He could no longer vanish into mist or summon the swarms of bats that had been his greatest advantage. His body was healing slower now, the wounds from the alien hunter's relentless strikes beginning to take their toll. For the first time in centuries, Dracula felt a pang of something unfamiliar, desperation. The predator, towering over him, raised its arm, ready to deliver the final blow. Its wrist blades gleamed in the fading moonlight, and its blood-red eyes glowed with the thrill of an imminent kill. It had faced many formidable opponents across countless worlds, but none as worthy as this dark prince. Dracula, bloodied and weary, could hear the faint hiss of the sun rising over the distant mountains. He knew his time was running out. If he stayed to fight even a moment longer, he would lose more than his strength, he would lose his life. But his pride, his unrelenting need to prove his supremacy, held him back. He was the son of the dragon, ruler of the night. He could not, would not, flee from this alien intruder. Yet the brutal reality of the situation gnawed at him. He had only moments before the dawn claimed him. The predator lunged, its wrist blades poised to strike through Dracula's heart. In a split second, instincts honed over centuries kicked in. Dracula transformed into a cloud of mist, slipping just beneath the blades. But even that transformation felt heavy, sluggish. He reformed a few feet away, panting, weakened. The predator snarled in frustration, but it could sense Dracula's power ebbing away. The hunt was nearly over. With his strength draining rapidly, Dracula made a decision that went against everything he had once stood for. His eyes, once blazing with fury, now flickered with bitter acceptance. The dawn would take him if he stayed. He had faced death many times in his life as a human, but this new form of mortality was different. This time, he was not the warrior with the upper hand. Realizing that victory was slipping through his fingers, Dracula turned and ran, retreating toward his castle hidden in the mountains. He moved with the last vestiges of his supernatural speed, but even that felt like wading through thick mud. His retreat was not graceful, it was driven by pure survival. The predator, watching him flee, paused. Its code as a hunter dictated that prey must fight to the bitter end, but Dracula's retreat was no coward's flight. It was the act of a warrior who knew his limits, who would fight another day. The predator tilted its head, clicking its mandibles in contemplation. The decision to pursue or let him go lay in the hunter's hands. It activated its thermal vision, watching Dracula's heat signature vanish into the distant shadows. A silent decision was made. Dracula was not finished. He was worthy prey, and their battle would continue, another time, another place. For now, the predator would allow him to live. There was no glory in killing a weakened foe. The predator deactivated its weapons and let out a low, reverberating growl, acknowledging the fight's conclusion. The creature turned away from the rising sun, its form shimmering before it disappeared into the forest, its hunt temporarily over. Dracula barely made it to his castle before the first rays of sunlight struck the earth. He collapsed within the safety of its stone walls, his body racked with pain. The curse of the vampire had saved him once again, but at what cost? As he lay there, weakened and humiliated, the memory of the predator haunted him. That creature, that hunter from the stars, had nearly bested him. Him, Vlad the Impaler, Prince of Wallachia, son of the dragon. He had never encountered such a foe, and it filled him with equal parts dread and excitement. He knew they would meet again. The predator would not leave without finishing its hunt. Dracula stood slowly, leaning on the cold stone of his castle's walls for support. His wounds would heal, his strength would return. But something inside him had changed. For centuries, he had believed himself invincible, the ultimate predator. Now he knew the truth. There were other monsters in the world. And some of them were stronger than him. But next time, he would be ready. In the shadows of his castle, Dracula swore a vow. He would master his powers, become something more than even the legend of the vampire could describe. And when the predator returned, he would face it not as a hunted creature, but as a being of pure, unstoppable darkness. The hunt was not over. It had only just begun.